Este episodio es presentado por Carolina Rangel y Allen Funeral Homes. Gracias por apoyar nuestra misión.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a Yo Soy The Boss, episodio de oportunidades, al cual es presentado de nuevo para ustedes por Carolina Rangel y Allen Funeral Home. Hoy, como ven, tenemos una lista de invitados y es súper importante el tema que vamos a tocar, así que les invitamos a que estén pendientes y que, como siempre, participen y hagan preguntas porque les aseguro que van a tener varias. So with us today is Carolina Rangel, es agente de seguros de vida. Mr. Willie Aiken, who is Jasper County's coroner o médico forense del condado de Jasper. ¿Qué tal? Ms. Vivian Galloway, owner of Allen Funeral Home. Maria, also part of the team at Allen Funeral Home.
Buenas tardes.
And Ms. Deputy Riley. Hi, and thank you. Hi. Thank you, everyone, for coming today and to discuss a very important topic, one that is inevitable and one that we can embrace when the time comes and plan for it so that we can help our relatives, our living relatives, handle our death in a more natural way, I would say. So, without further ado, Mr. Riley, or Mr. Aiken, I'm sorry. Tell us about yourself and what is it that you do exactly?
Okay, well, my name is Willie Aiken. I'm the Jasper County coroner, and my job is pretty much to certify death certificates and pronounce cause and manner of death. You know, it's 5 manners of death: natural, accidental, suicidal, homicidal, undetermined. And as the coroner, my job is to pretty much determine how someone died.
Oh, yeah.
So that's pretty much what we do in a nutshell.
How do you come to be in your position?
Well, my position is an elected position every 4 years. This is actually an election year. So every 4 years I have to run for the position, and once voted in, then I continue to do the job.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
So in this, November?
June will be the primary. June 11th is primary, and then November will be the general election.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
So maybe we can talk about, later on.
I can come back,
on
yes.
what needs to be done.
Yes.
How we need to go out and vote to have you back again, right?
I would love to come back.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes.
Deputy Riley, tell us about yourself, please.
Well, my name is Deputy Riley. I've been with the coroner's office now almost 2 years. I focus and deal more with our records, like with SLED, solicitor's office, families when they're requesting copies of autopsies, OSHA, DHEC, just about everybody.
Wow. Miss Galloway, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, well, we've been in the business, Allen Funeral Home, since the early 90s. And in order to become, I'm a funeral director and owner. My husband is dual, which he's embalmer as well as a director. And there are several schools that one can attend to become licensed as a funeral director. We're very happy to have Maria Noriega as part of our team so that we are able to reach various communities. Yeah. And our ultimate goal is to meet their needs and to help families with closure.
Yeah, yes, and an immense job that you guys are doing. And I'm going to tell a little story of what, I just experienced recently with a very close friend of mine and how Maria was able to help me through that process. So Maria, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Bueno, buenas tardes. Mi función más que nada es lo siguiente. He estado con la funeraria Allen Funeral Home, yo creo que por un periodo de 20 años ya. Empecé a trabajar ahí, primeramente interpretando, traduciendo documentos, pero con el paso del tiempo me dieron la oportunidad de estudiar
de prepararme más y obtener parte de mi licencia. Aún no la he completado, pero estoy en el proceso y parte de mi trabajo es tratar con las familias, encontrarles, darles confort, mirarlas y mirar cuáles son sus necesidades, ya sea de dolor, de dinero, qué es lo que ellos necesitan, darles paz de la mejor manera posible, hacer que sus seres queridos, sus seres amados lleguen ahora sí que a su país lo más pronto que se pueda. Para mí es un reto. Cada vez que tengo una familia, me gusta hacerme retos y si lo voy a hacer en 10 días, me gusta proponerme hacerlo en 7. Gracias a Dios me lo ha permitido. Y como lo dice Verónica, hace poco tuve una experiencia con ella. Para mí cada familia es especial y yo lo tomo personal porque al final de cuentas el dolor de cada familia es una prioridad, prioridad y mi trabajo es ese, que ellos estén tranquilos, que estén en paz y yo encargarme de lo necesario.
Sí, y fíjense y hay una razón por la que Carolina la dejé al último, porque como si se pueden dar cuenta del tema que vamos a hablar hoy, las personas que están aquí y que ya se presentaron con ustedes, sus tareas vienen después de lo sucedido, ¿verdad? Y en este momento, Carolina, y la razón por la que es vital la presencia de ella, es porque ella va a compartir información y nos va a dar a saber del proceso para poder planear con un seguro de vida y poder, planear este momento que en esta vida lo único seguro que tenemos es la muerte. Y entonces no tenemos que asustarnos ni nada de hablar de ello, sino al contrario, es planear. Carolina, háblanos de ti.
Muchísimas gracias, Verónica, de verdad, porque tu invitación para mí es muy importante. Así les explicamos a toda nuestra gente hispana que nos ve la importancia de tener un seguro de vida, aunque ustedes no lo crean. Bueno, mi nombre, ya lo dijiste, Carolina Rangel, agente de seguros de vida y salud, pero en realidad, pues yo, mi pasión es los seguros de vida. Porque pues he tenido muchísimos casos que me han llegado, aunque la persona no lo vea importante, pero qué importante es adquirirlo en una edad temprana.
Así es.
Porque en una edad temprana te cuesta muchísimo más económico a que esperar a una edad mayor, como 45, 50 años, que es mucho más caro para nosotros y la persona termina no comprándolo.
Sí.
Y aparte de eso, los seguros de vida nada más hasta los 70 años tienen oportunidad de adquirirlo. Por eso es muy importante que lo adquieran ahora la gente joven. Y también hay unos planes buenísimos que no solamente te cubren en muerte, sino también te cubren en vida y también te cubren como un plan de ahorro para tu futuro.
Así es. Como les digo, es información de suma importancia. La situación que de nuevo nos trae aquí es recientemente yo soy, como muchos saben, agente inmobiliario. Con ello conozco mucha gente y tuve que uno de mis clientes, quien también fue un amigo, falleció inmigrante, como la mayoría de nosotros, sin tener ningún familiar en este país. Lo que hizo que yo pudiera asistir días antes de su fallecimiento, al estar platicando, lo que hizo posible que yo pudiera asistir con los planes que él tenía, con los deseos que él tenía, es que él planificó para ese momento. Él se preparó para ese momento y aún así, no siendo familiar, no teniendo un tipo poder para poder asistirle después de ya fallecido, fue esencial en este caso la ayuda de María. Quien me permitió, por lo mismo de que él dejó ya eso planeado, también el hecho de que yo conocía el abogado de él, y les digo, sin tener yo ninguna relación directa, más que amigo, pudimos llevar esto a cabo y y ahora sí que haberme llevado de la mano para llevar a cabo es inevitable, pero no es la situación en la mayoría de las veces. Muchas de las veces estamos aquí como inmigrantes y no pensamos en ello, y muchas veces estamos aquí solos. Si tenemos familia, bien, pero muchos de nosotros no tenemos familia. Y entonces de eso es en lo que nos vamos a enfocar, del porqué de la importancia de planificar. Not too long ago, it was probably about a month ago, I had a situation with a client of mine. I'm a realtor, and a client of mine passed away. And I happened to visit him at the hospital a couple of days before his passing, and he was telling me what he wanted to do, what his plans were. That helped a lot with expediting the process of someone who had no relatives in the States. I was lucky enough to, because I represented him as a client previously, years ago, I got to know his family. They got to know me. So I was able to actually communicate and go to the hospital and carry his wishes. And Maria was instrumental in helping me and guiding me on that process. But that's not the case with many of us immigrants, right? Tell us, please tell us a little bit about what you see, what is most common in a lot of times is accidents.
So pretty much how on a daily basis where we deal with immigrants or individuals who don't have any family. So if it always starts with death, of course. You know, once someone passes away, then the coroner's office is involved. So a lot of times when we get to the scene, our very next thing we have to do once we're finished is to notify the next of kin. So that's where the problem comes in, because a lot of times, well, first thing is sometimes it's always a language barrier with us, you know, so we're working on, fixing that. But once we get past that hurdle, it's the locating the next of kin. And when they're not in the States, it makes it even harder.
Right.
So a lot of
Mr.
times.
Aiken, let me stop you for a minute. Let me just ask you, who is the next of kin?
Good question. So the next of kin, if you are married, your spouse will be your next of kin. But if you are not married, then your next of kin will be if you have any adult children, or if you don't have any children, then your parents would then become your next of kin. So it's a order that we go in. We always find out, of course, if you have a spouse, husband, or a wife. But if not, then we look for your children or your parents. So we have to notify them before we can publicly release information of who's this deceased person. We have to get that next of kin notified prior. A lot of times with identifications, we go off of your ID, and a lot of times with the Hispanic community, with the black community, white community, the IDs aren't always updated. A lot of people don't think about that, but sometimes your driver license is the only thing that we have to go by, and then we're going to the wrong houses and things. So, but as far as where it comes in with the next of kin, finding the next of kin is always the challenging part. So. That's kind of how the ball begins, and sometimes the problem begins as well.
Wow. And how do you two work together in that aspect?
Well, Deputy Riley handles a lot of our records requests. At the coroner's office, we deal with a lot of requests as far as medical records, EMS reports, SLED reports, car accidents. We've been dealing with a lot of Hispanics in vehicle accidents. So a lot of times we're dealing with the highway patrol. So we have to get their reports so we can do our coroner report. Again, the coroner's office is to determine the cause and manner of death. So we may say, okay, it's an accident. The cause is blunt force trauma. The manner is accidental. But we also run a tox. So we want to know, was this person intoxicated? Was there other drugs involved, or was it just a heart attack before the car accident? So that's why we do the forensic autopsies. But Deputy Riley is the person that makes sure that we get the requests out, and also once the medical records come, she makes sure that it's uploaded into our database, so whichever deputy or myself that is working the case, we can kind of see what's going on, read the records, get it to our pathologist who performs the autopsies. So she's very vital in the process of getting reports in and out.
At what point do you guys connect?
Miss Vivian, that will be, I guess, First of all, the autopsy. How long does it take to get an autopsy report?
Well, now that varies. You know, you have some cases where you have automobile accidents where we can tell that it's blunt force trauma, but then you have some cases where you have someone that was found in the home, so we have to do a toxic. That can be weeks. So to average, we always tell our families at the coroner's office about, Riley, what we tell them about four to 6 weeks.
Between 4 to 6 months on the long end.
Yes.
But on the fast end, like the coroner said, it could be 3-4 weeks. It just depends on the severity of the case.
And I guess that is if you are able to contact the next of kin, because if not, then what do you do with the body?
So when a next of kin can't be contacted, we could, at the coroner's office, after 30 days,
30 days.
we can
Imagine
cremate the remains of the decedent if no one's located. We do have some remains there with us now that have been cremated. So we're getting ready to do a publication with their names to hopefully find some families. If not, we're going to do a mass burial eventually because they're not claimed. And that's from the previous administration as well.
Yeah.
So, yes.
That's interesting and unfortunate in many cases. And then, yes, at what point do they come to you?
Well, if the coroner's office naturally is the first call,
Right.
and the coroner's office usually would ask once they find the next of kin, what funeral home would you want us to release your loved one? And that's how we would get involved if they request our service.
Right.
And then the coroner's office would reach out to us, and sometimes the family will reach out to us as soon as their loved one has expired. However, the coroner office and our office will have to work together for the release.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Básicamente, una de las, y la conversación que está, si alguien fallece, especialmente un accidente, o no importa las circunstancias, puede ser en su casa, de un ataque cardíaco, lo que sea. Si no hay algún familiar, si no ha habido un plan de qué pasaría después de eso, y el médico forense toma posesión, ahora sí que del cuerpo, si no hay alguien que puedan ellos contactar, si no hay alguien que venga y reclame el cuerpo, pueden ellos quedarse hasta 30 días esa persona en su oficina, y si después de ese tiempo sigue sin ser reclamado, se incinera. Y de nuevo, es la importancia de cómo poder evitar, solo porque si la situación es de que estamos aquí sin ningún familiar, sin amigos, sin alguien quien pueda ser responsable de nosotros mismos podemos planear para ese momento tan difícil. Carolina, ¿de qué manera crees tú que puede la persona contactarte y poder, qué tipo de planeación pueden hacer ellos contigo?
Claro que sí, mira, Verónica, bueno, me pueden contactar a mi teléfono, a mi oficina, pueden ir directamente a mi oficina en la isla. Yo tengo mi oficina allá y con gusto les puedo dar una asesoría completamente gratis, porque ese es mi trabajo, encontrarle el mejor seguro en el cual se sientan protegidos, no tanto ellos, sino sus familiares a la hora de que el momento menos inesperado, pero el que va a pasar,
Claro.
porque es algo que va a pasar. Y también un mito que tienen muchísimas personas es que no lo puedo hacer porque no tengo papeles, porque soy inmigrante, porque no, es mentira. Puedes hacer tu seguro de vida con simplemente tu pasaporte.
Sí. Wow, increíble. What type of I don't know, what type of document, what type of power what can someone do who doesn't have anyone here? Let's just say they've already purchased their life insurance. They're still here by themselves. What could help you all try to expedite the process of, if it's someone who, again, doesn't have anyone here, but they have left, what is it? Is it a will? Is it a power of attorney? What could someone, just so that our audience knows, what can they do to make things easier for you to expedite the process of either sending them back home where they want, cremate them and send, their ashes? Educate us.
I would
What can we
say-
do?
I would say if they don't have any family or relatives here, to reach out to their funeral home and pre-plan.
Okay.
If you're by yourself, make pre-arrangements, if it's just you. Now, if you have family, and even if you have family here, that's not a bad idea to come in, and speak with the funeral home, and they can help you out in situations like that.
Oh, yeah?
Well, I think oftentimes our younger generation was not thinking in terms of death.
Right.
So my thought would be most people will find they work, and I think if the owner of a company, whom when they hire someone, get as much background information on them, where you're from, who should we contact if you get sick, and they would have a record on them. And now, like your business here, the Hispanic Business Association can also reach out and start a log on just people from the various countries. We have to come up with something, but as far as coming to the funeral home, most often that's the last place you want to come.
Well, and it's not so much a generational thing, it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
For us, I'm from Mexico, and I can tell you, a conversation about planning our death is like you're inviting it to come before. It's meant to happen. Right. So a lot of times it's cultural. It's like it's no one wants to talk about that. María, ¿qué situaciones has encontrado tú o te has topado que tú dices, cómo me encantaría que la comunidad supiera que esto se puede evitar? O sea,
en realidad, como te digo, es cada familia, cada caso es diferente, pero cada caso, lo que sí te puedo decir es esto, es un tema que nadie quiere tocar, es un tema del cual nunca queremos hablar, no es es algo que no tenemos en nuestra agenda como unos 15 años, un cumpleaños, una boda. Entonces, lo que sí les digo es que lo más seguro es que si nacimos, vamos a morir en algún momento. Eso es lo más seguro que tenemos en esta vida. Lo que siempre digo y lo que siempre les recomiendo, ¿verdad? Traten de tener, si están solos aquí, traten de tener a un amigo, a una persona de confianza, a su empleador, a su empleador, encargado de ti, tener tus documentos en orden, por favor, tu acta de nacimiento, tu pasaporte, una identificación, y si no tienes nada de eso, por lo menos dejar un contacto con tu familia en tu país. Mira, esta es mi mamá, este es mi hermano, tenemos que hacerlo porque es algo, créamelo, que pasa todos los días, pasa más seguido últimamente. El coronel lo acaba de decir, tenemos cuerpos en la morgue donde los cuerpos no son reclamados, después de 30 días tienen que ser cremados. Y después de ser cremado, créame lo que he tenido casos de 20 años donde la familia sigue en su país buscando a su ser querido acá con la esperanza de encontrarlo. Entonces, recibir al ser querido en una cajita de cremaciones es muy triste. Y una experiencia única, pues para mí cada familia ha sido única. El dolor es el mismo, el perder un hijo, el perder un padre, un hermano. Es algo bien difícil, pero es algo del que sí tenemos que hablar y es algo del que sí tenemos que planear. Tiene que estar en una prioridad.
We have a question from the audience, and it's asking, do you have to be legally married in order for the officers to release the information in the case of death?
Yes, you have to be legally married. Common law isn't recognized in South Carolina. So, yes, you have to be legally married.
Really?
Yes.
What could they do if they're not legally married. Maybe a power of attorney. A power of attorney, a lot of times it's, who goes to an attorney, right, to do that? Could it be something that can be notarized? Something written that can be notarized by...
Yes, you can have a final rights of disposition, and of course the funeral homes can always walk you through that, but yes, you can have it where a particular person handles your final disposition or your funeral.
Oh, yeah. Carolina, what about, y qué viene con el seguro de vida? ¿Quién puede ser tu, ¿cómo se le llama? Beneficiario.
Sí, mira, los beneficiarios pueden ser hasta 4 personas. Pueden ser amigos, pueden ser familiares cercanos, tu mamá, tus hijos.
¿O pareja?
Tu pareja, por supuesto, hasta el novio.
Y a eso me refería.
Sí,
Yo muchas de las veces...
Tu esposo, sí. Todos ellos pueden tener, pueden ser los beneficiarios. Bueno, imagínate, les voy a contar un caso muy inusual que me pasó, que un cliente quería dejar a su perro como el dueño del dinero, imagínate.
A client of first wanted to leave, as beneficiary to his or pet. The dog, and then what do you do? That's...
No se puede, lamentablemente. Sí, a las personas más cercanas, por supuesto que se lo pueden dejar. Pero yo aquí, aprovechando el momento, quería preguntarle a la señora María,
claro.
Para que toda la comunidad se entere de cuánto cuesta un sepelio, bien sea cremación o bien sea una parte de buscar una urna, no sé. ¿Cómo se maneja por acá?
Bueno, eso se maneja de diferentes maneras. El precio varía porque, como te digo, si es una repatriación somos diferentes países. En realidad los precios no son fijos. They're asking about the prices, how the prices are managed in a funeral home, as a cremation, a burial. En realidad depende de todo el cementerio, lo que la familia decida. En realidad un funeral te puede costar desde $5,000 hasta $40,000, ¿verdad? O más. Eso ya es la opción de la familia. Un servicio básico puede ser $5,000, pero de ahí viene el ataúd. Hay ataúdes que son de $3,000, hay ataúdes que son de $20,000, y hemos tenido varios casos así. Entonces, las repatriaciones son diferentes. Las repatriaciones incluyen la aerolínea, las repatriaciones incluyen otros cuidados que implican más gastos.
Y para que toda la comunidad hispana se entere, ese dinero que van a adquirir en esa póliza de vida pueden repatriar a la persona, a sus familiares, y también todo lo referente al funeral acá, o si lo quieren cremar y lo quieren enviar a su país.
Wow. Pues fíjate que curiosamente preguntabas acerca del costo de quizás el servicio fúnebre. Aquí tenemos una pregunta que hacen acerca del costo de una póliza de $100,000 para una persona de 30 a 40 años.
Pero eso tengo que cotizar en un sistema, porque hay un sistema para cotizar, pero les puedo dar algo, una idea de 30 a 40. Bueno, de 30 puede costar $20 al mes, $25 por $100,000. 40 años puede costar, de 100,000 puede costar $35 al mes, que no es nada. Y todo lo que les va a cubrir, porque precisamente esta póliza cubre en muerte y en vida. Y en vida, ¿cómo les va a cubrir? Si les pasa un accidente muy catastrófico, que no puedan trabajar, que puedan quedar incapacitados. Aparte, el seguro de vida te cubre si te pasa una enfermedad como un cáncer, te va a dar el 90% de esa cantidad en un cheque en vida.
Wow.
Es necesario que lo hagan.
Es increíble que gastamos más dinero somos de fiesta, somos fiesteros, nos encanta divertirnos, y no es que tengamos que dejar de hacer eso, sino lo que sí podemos hacer es de que en vez de un par de bebidas en esa parranda, podemos guardar ese dinero y llevarlo a los que nos va a traer seguridad, tranquilidad, y de lo que va a brindar a nuestros familiares tranquilidad de ellos, y no solamente lidiar con el dolor tremendo de habernos perdido, sino también nos va a evitar esos procesos y el de no saber si llegamos a fallecer simplemente porque no tuvimos ese momento, no tomamos ese momento de dejar esa información lista o llevarla con nosotros. Muchas de las veces, si no tenemos a nadie aquí, lleven información, traigan con ustedes información de familiares, de qué país vienen, de cómo contactarse con algún familiar en caso de que algo tremendo, ¿verdad?, suela pasar. De nuevo, porque ya el dolor de perdernos es tremendo, como para también el que no sepan de nosotros o la dificultad de no poder llegar a nuestro país. Tell me, how often do you have to go through the process of having to contact the consulates? If you know where that person is from, but how difficult is it when there's no relative and you have to contact the consulate? What is that process of actually sending
Como lo mencionaba,
individuals?
cada país es diferente, cada país tiene diferentes requerimientos. Lo que sí es correcto es que se necesitan cumplir con las reglas de cada país para que un cuerpo sea repatriado. El Consulado de México, creo que ellos son los que responden un poquito más rápido en cuestión de documentos. Como les digo, cuando me encuentro con una familia, yo le pido a la familia que me den un periodo de 10 días hábiles para obtener todos los permisos. Normalmente el consulado mexicano tarda, en cuanto ellos reciben mis documentos, un periodo de 4 días para que yo los vuelva a recibir. Consulado de otros países, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Honduras, Guatemala, son diferentes requerimientos. Las aerolíneas piden diferentes requerimientos también, diferentes documentos. Pero lo más importante es siempre, el primero es la acta de nacimiento. La acta de nacimiento es el documento vital para cualquier repatriación, para cualquier acta de defunción. Eso nos hace el trabajo a nosotros como funeraria más fácil, más rápido, para que, yo entiendo, tratamos de dejar a ustedes, las familias, vivir su dolor, vivir su duelo. Mientras tanto, nosotros nos enfocamos en obtener todo lo necesario para que todo el servicio esté listo en menos de 10 días o un máximo de 10 días. Y también depende mucho de la aerolínea. La aerolínea cambia mucho en cuestión de documentos, en cuestión de requerimientos. Todos los consulados son diferentes. Eso es correcto.
Sí. Gracias. De nuevo, cualquier pregunta que tengan, sigan participando porque está interesante, de nuevo, como un tema no muy popular, pero algo inevitable y que nos va a pasar a todos en algún debido momento, ¿verdad? Carolina, ¿los beneficiarios tienen que tener seguro social para poder obtener su póliza?
Para nada, es más, pueden estar hasta en otro país.
¿Sí?
Sí.
¿Y qué tipo de documentación?
Solamente necesito de sus nombres y sus fechas de nacimiento.
¿Sí? Pues bueno, aquí nos están pidiendo tu número de contacto, cómo puede la gente contactarse, y aparte de que nos va a decir, también va a estar escrita en lo que es el podcast o la información, ¿verdad?
Bueno, me pueden contactar al 201-580-7488. Yo tengo mi oficina en la isla, estoy a la orden para cuando quieran ir. En la isla, la revista de la isla, yo tengo mi oficina ahí. Sí. Cualquier información que necesiten, comuníquense al 201-580-7488.
Gracias.
La asesoría es completamente gratis y también,
muy importante,
no solamente aquí, Vero, sino también en Georgia puedo hacer seguro de vida.
Excelente. How do you get to your position aside from being elected? What type of education do you have? Because I know you're licensed all over the place too.
So prior to me becoming coroner, I have a degree in mortuary science. I'm a licensed funeral director and embalmer, and I also have a bachelor's degree in business administration as well. I'm pursuing my master's in forensic medicine now, and
Yeah.
yes, and I know I'm getting older now because
Well, funny you say when I looked you up, because I looked you up obviously before today. I'm like, this guy, how old is he? You look so young.
Yes, I'm 35, so
You are young.
I started early, and
Wow.
you know, of course, that's my background, and since being the coroner, I have taken different classes and got certifications, and my deputies there are taking the classes as well. To be certified, we have to continuing education classes. But like I said, I'm pursuing that forensic medicine now.
Can you think of an instance where I mean, you deal with this unfortunately on a day-to-day basis, that has left you an experience that has definitely or stayed with you?
You know, that's a difficult question because a lot of times folks ask me, "What's the worst thing you've seen?" You know, my worst isn't most people's worst.
Right.
You know,
Right.
but I would tell folks, this year I discovered what the hardest part of my job is, because you know, even though I deal with death, I love what I do. You know, I used to almost do it for free when I first got here. So, you know, I love what I do. But the hardest part of the job is the notification. You know, when you have to knock on a door to tell someone that, you know, their child, their husband, you know, they're not coming back home. You know, most people look at me and say, well, you know, a gunshot or a car accident would be the worst thing. But my worst thing is pretty much just notifying the next of kin. You know, that's the hardest part of my job. You know, my deputies may feel it's something different, but you know, for me, it's just making that phone. Well, we try not to make the phone calls, but you know, if we have to, we would, but we try to do it in person to make it more personal. And families have a lot of questions. You know, sometimes they have a lot of questions.
And many times it's not something that you might be able to answer at that moment.
Yes, and most families want to know, you know, right then and there. So. You know, Maria at the funeral homes, I know they get an earful from the families because they want results, they want death certificates. But Maria asked earlier, they're gonna
call you.
Right, and Maria's gonna call because you know, with the autopsy process, you know, we do a forensic autopsy where we test the organs to see of any malformities, or do we do the toxicology to test. So we have to wait until we get tox back. We have to wait until we get the final autopsy back. We have to wait until we get the reports back from the police departments.
Wow.
You know, video footage, you know, because we want to get everything to determine the cause and manner of death. So the autopsy process doesn't stop you from being shipped back home. You know, a lot of times, you know, we say it may take 8 weeks to get the final death certificate, but what we would do is pin the death certificate for the funeral home to get a copy so they can begin their process. So a lot of times Maria will call and say, hey, we need this form, we need that form. And so that's how we work together. You know, they work directly with the family and then directly with us.
Wow.
So it's like
It's teamwork. And that's, I think, the reason why you wanted, you know, to have us all here, and I
want to say something, you know, about Miss Vivian. You know, I've been with him for 20 years, and she's my mentor.
Yeah.
I have learned so much, you know, in being next to her, and what I admire is that, you know, there's no time. You get a phone call at 3, 4 in the morning, 2, and you gotta get ready. You gotta go and see the family and that's the hardest part, you know, taking their loved one. And
that's amazing. So you basically are on the clock 24/7.
Yes, ma'am.
7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Wow.
Rain, sleet, or snow.
Monday.
Yo tenía una pregunta para más que todo el doctor acá.
Ajá.
¿Ellos cobran algún dinero por entregar el cuerpo cuando están en la morgue, cuando lo van a buscar, si pasan más de 20 días?
Basically, it's how is your salary covered? Do you charge the families or?
No, so I'm elected, so the taxpayers pay my salary. Now, we as the county coroner's office, we authorize autopsies for the family. So if it's a case that we're actively investigating, we pay for the autopsies. But if we rule the death as a certain way and the family want
question
a sec-
it or
question it or wants a second opinion, then they can do a private autopsy, which ranges about $4,000 to $5,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
but releasing the bodies to family members, that's not something
There's
that
a fee for that.
that there's a fee for.
No, there's no fee at all.
Okay, what about you? You also coming out to the scene of the accidents or when there is a death in a home reported. What, if there's anything that you can tell us that has stayed with you?
I agree with the coroner. The hardest thing is just to break that type of news to a loved one, or they come home and everything was fine, and it just depends on the circumstances. But it's always hard to be in that moment and hear them cry and react to it. I had a case a couple months ago where it was a young man that was involved, and he ended up losing his life, unfortunately, and the parents thought he was home. So it's always those type situations that hurts.
Yes, and with our young generation, and I don't think it's just now. It's always
No.
been to where they don't think about those things. Is when we as a parent tell you need to be home at a certain time, or yes, you got together with friends and you were supposed to come home but didn't. We're thinking as parents, you're still at that friend's house. And then never in our minds did we
Yes.
think that you were going to get a call from you or a knock on the door from you. So give them an advice to this new generation, to this young generation, please.
I say slow the cars down. That's the first thing that, far as at the coroner's office, I always tell my voters when I go around doing speaking engagements that we are office of statistics. We deal with numbers. I like to look at the amount of overdoses, the amount of car accidents, the amount of homicides. So we look at all of those things. So when I go out in certain areas, I had a deputy to pull me some numbers before we got here, and we saw that with the Hispanic community, the younger community, is vehicle accidents, but it's a mixture of alcohol. So of course, the cliche, don't drink and drive, but it's a reason. But the speed itself is really what's gonna, end your life.
Yeah.
And death is no reset button on that. So my advice is the speed limit, because a lot of times I get calls from newspapers wanting to know, was the individual wearing a seatbelt? I would say yes. So then they got to the point they said, well, would the seatbelt have saved their life? And that particular time frame when they called, I said no, because the excessive speeds, no matter if you were wearing a seatbelt or not, they wouldn't have survived. So I'll say slow the cars down.
Yeah. And what can you tell someone, these kids from high school that probably don't have any idea what they want to study? Because I can only assume that people in your profession are not easy to come, right?
No, it's a calling. Yes.
So is that what it is?
Yes. So like I said, my background is funeral service. So I've been doing this since 9th grade. It's always been a passion of mine. But my staff, they just, like you said, you have to love what you do, because when they're around the office, and those phones go off, they're gone. We're out there, because you never know what you're going to see. I'm one of those people, I get bored easily. But on this job here, every day is something different, and besides the death, we're able to work with folks like Maria. We were able to work with folks, it was SLED. We were able to work with folks from different countries, because sometimes when you're trying to get folks back home, you have to make certain calls. So just the communication and the contact that I've made since coming corner.
And I can see how noble each one of you and what you do is, including obviously Carolina, because number one, what you deal with on a daily basis, I don't think I could do it. It's not easy. On the flip side, I can only imagine what you can bring to families as well, is the comfort of being able to say, listen, unfortunately, this happened, but we have your child, we have your brother, we have your sister. It's hard to deal with, but at the same time, it's even harder when you don't know where your loved ones are. And in your case, what you do, again, is you, at the end of the day, you bring peace to those, loved ones in what you do. What you do is not easy. Again, been there, experienced it with friends, with relatives, in the care that you show. And again, Maria, it was amazing that when I contacted you, you were at your own experience, your own, dealing with your own personal struggle at that time. I would have never imagined that was the case, because you took that call and you took care of me and guided me. It wasn't until later that you told me where you were. You weren't even in the country. So again, what you do in the service that you provide to our community is incredible, and I thank you for that.
Gracias.
And Carolina, lo que tú haces también, el hecho de, porque no es fácil el tener esa conversación con un cliente y decir, mira, tenemos que planear para esto. Yo creo que de hecho hasta cada quien evita quizás venir contigo, porque de nuevo nuestra cultura es de que no, porque estamos invitando a que eso pase, y no es así. ¿Te topas tú mucho con eso?
Sí, por supuesto. A veces tengo que explicarle a la gente que no es simplemente un seguro de vida. Como mucha gente me dice, no, pero es que voy a dejar a los demás con dinero. Eso no es así, para nada. Eso es algo que, o sea, porque te estás protegiendo a ti mismo en vida y en muerte. Entonces, mi consejo es que sean precavidos, porque eso es algo que nos va a pasar a todos en cualquier momento, y es muy difícil que cuando tú te mueras los familiares te lloren y también tengan que buscar ayuda para poderte enterrar. Eso sí es difícil.
Sí, ¿verdad?
Eso es muy difícil, la verdad. Y también, Vero, les comento un caso de una cliente que hace poco me tocó. Ella hizo seguro de vida conmigo y al tiempo, a los 5 meses, le diagnosticaron cáncer. Y ese dinero que se le está consiguiendo en vida se le va a dar en un cheque. Entonces, eso es lo importante, porque aquí los medicamentos para el cáncer son súper costosos. Entonces, esas son las previsiones que tienen que tomar para obtener un seguro de vida, y si están jóvenes, adquiéranlo, porque es muchísimo más económico.
Sí, ¿verdad? Y yo creo que pronto, y quisiera hacer un seminario para hablar particularmente de ese tema, de qué es la importancia, de poderse proteger en ese aspecto. Question from the audience for you guys. Can one prepay for their funeral arrangement?
Yes. Yes, it's called pre-needs. And what ones would do is they make their entire arrangements. They know exactly how much the funeral will cost. And let's say if they made it 10 years prior and the rates go up, the funeral home would still have to honor what they did 10 years prior. And that is a good way of doing things, because if you have power of attorney dies when the person dies. And if the arrangements were not made prior to death, the power of attorney has nothing.
Wow. And so that arrangement really never expires. If it's 10, 20, 30 years.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, unless it's written in the contract. If it isn't written in the contract that you can go up on merchandise or anything, they get exactly what they ordered 10 years prior to.
Do a lot of people do that?
Yes, I think I have maybe 35 or 40 people that have made arrangements, and I have one client that goes back into the 90s.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. And
Yes.
and is it more common with certain communities, or do you see it just in general?
Just in general, it's almost like cremation. The African American community did not believe in cremation, but now we're finding that there is an increase in the African American community.
Wow. It's well. Oh yes, okay. I was gonna say maybe there's another question from the audience, but they're actually kicking us out. No. Anything that you want to leave us with, to leave the community in particular, the Hispanic community, with a message, with advice, other than to vote for you.
I'll say that for next time.
Yeah.
But you know, if you have someone in your family that is deceased, if you have questions, you know, give our office a call, and we'll be more than happy to help you. Sometimes it's not in our county, but you know, we still be able to lead you or guide you in the right direction if they have questions.
And you're in particular in Jasper County,
Jasper County,
right?
yes.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Maria. You want to say something?
Yo quería decir algo, y esto es en general para, ahora sí que un consejo, porque yo soy madre y soy abuela, entonces trabajar aquí, trabajar en una funeraria no es fácil, como dice Verónica, y cómo llegas a tu casa, cómo lo haces, cómo te enfrentas de regreso a tu familia cada tarde y no pasó nada, ¿me entiendes? Entonces yo el consejo que le doy a todos, especialmente a los jóvenes, por favor, estudien, prepárense, porque tocarle la puerta a tu mamá, tocarle la puerta a tus hermanos, darles esa noticia de que estabas tomado, de que ibas recio, créeme lo que es el dolor más grande para una mamá. También ustedes, padres, sean conscientes, porque aunque no lo crean, el año pasado, el año 2023, tristemente me tocó, ahora sí que con madres, dejaron madres solteras, con hijos, con nietos, y todo por el alcohol, por no ser conscientes de que manejar tomados no es una buena decisión. Y lo único, si no estudian, a trabajar, aquí venimos todos a trabajar, a ayudarnos a salir adelante y a demostrar que sí somos algo y que sí tenemos una voz. Yo tengo 45 años y créemelo, todavía sigo estudiando, yo no me rindo. Así es que por favor, gracias.
Gracias. Deputy, what would you like? Any last words, any last message that you'd like to share with
I would like to
the
share, I would say
public?
the importance of making sure within reasoning a way that we can contact your family. Even if you have to write something down and put it in your wallet, keep it on you, a bracelet, anything, because those things are very crucial.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And many of us, yes. If we have a driver's license, many of us in our community cannot get one. But again, in our wallets, contact information, phone numbers, country of, where we come from. A lot of us do have passports. Try to carry that information with us, because again, God forbid, an incident happens. They want to be able to, get to your families, that get to your loved ones, and get you to them in the best and fastest way possible. Ms. Vivian?
Yes. Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you for inviting me. I would also like to invite the community to come to our facility. They're welcome to come. I'll be more than happy in directing them or helping them in getting into the business, giving them the direction, because the more you know, the better off you are.
Yes, that's true. Carolina.
Bueno, Vero,
Un último mensaje.
muchísimas gracias de verdad por la invitación del podcast de Voice. Y a toda la comunidad latina, hispana que nos ve hoy, mi consejo es que tomen un poquito de conciencia. ¿Por qué? Porque la importancia de un seguro de vida no es simplemente un lujo, como muchos piensan.
Así
no.
es.
Un seguro de vida es una necesidad, porque qué difícil momento que te digan, murió mi papá, murió mi hermano, murió mi hijo, y tengo que salir a la calle a buscar dinero para poder repatriarlo. Eso es
Sí.
un momento muy difícil, porque ya con solamente saber que estás muerto, ese es el golpe más
Es el
duro.
golpe. Ujú.
Entonces, tomen conciencia y adquieran un seguro de vida que es, aunque usted no lo crea, es accesible.
Claro, así es. Y de nuevo, el hablar de este tema no es algo, un tabú, vamos a decir, es algo que pasa a diario, que nunca esperamos que nos pase a nosotros o no tan a temprana edad, pero hay que prepararnos para estar listos y para poder dejar a nuestros familiares tranquilos cuando llegue ese momento. Así que no tengan miedo, no tengan, no sé, no se puede decir horror, pero de poder planificar para esto, porque de nuevo, y lo hemos dicho más de una vez, es súper importante y es lo más seguro en esta vida. Así que thank you for being with us today and sharing your experiences and talking about what you deal with on a daily basis and giving our community a message and advice to prepare for this inevitable moment. Gracias por acompañarnos a Yo Soy the Boss y los esperamos, recuerden, cada jueves a las 6 de la tarde que se conecten, porque así como a veces tenemos temas divertidos, interesantes, y este es un tema de inmenso interés, de inmensa importancia, y es algo de nuevo que debemos de estar conscientes que va a pasar y debemos hacer lo posible para prepararnos. ¿Ok? Gracias, que pasen buenas noches y nos vemos la próxima semana.
Hasta luego. Bye.
Este episodio es presentado por Carolina Rangel y Allen Funeral Homes. Gracias por apoyar nuestra misión.